Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 10th, 2016 regular meeting of the Milford Board of Aldermen. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, and as a tribute to those who served and sacrificed for our country, please join me as we salute our flag and then remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our troops and veterans. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Anderson?
Present.
Alderman Beatty? Alderman Beatty? Excuse me. Alderman Bevan?
Here.
Alderman Beer? Here. Alderman Casey?
Here.
Alderman Gurman?
Here.
Alderman Genotasio?
Here.
Alderman Golden? Alderman Grant?
Here.
Alderman Hardeman is excused. Alderman Shaw? Alderman Smith? Alderman Veccarelli? Alderman Vitro?
Here.
Alderman Vitale? Here. 14 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next portion of the meeting is devoted to public comment. Statements are limited to the legislative function of the Board of Aldermen. Time limit granted to each speaker shall be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements, or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. In order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that everyone please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to address the board can come up to the podium at this time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Mayor, City Attorney, Kevin Crusaden, 26 Cherry Street, here on the 8-24 for 0 Myers Lane. I just wanted to briefly respond to Mr. Whalen's comments and with respect to the petition. I had an opportunity to look at the petition. It doesn't seem that there's anybody from Myers Lane that signed the petition, which is the street that would be most impacted by that request that we made earlier during public hearing, number one. Number two, out of the 42 or 43 signatures that are on it, that represents about 23 households. I counted the houses on the neighborhoods and the streets that were listed on the petition. There's about 96 or 97 houses total, so it's not a large percentage of people that had signed this. Also, I don't know, respectfully to Mr. Whalen, I did see some of the other materials that he had presented to the neighbors, I think either via email or during the course of his walking the neighborhood and knocking on doors, and some of the information is just simply incorrect. The lessos are not planning to get this property approved and sell the house. It is not open space land that was for all intents and purposes. Thank you.
Just like to say the attorney is correct. There were no signatures on Myers Lane, but there were 2 signatures on Myers Court, and that there's also 3 signatures on properties that...
Sir, you need to tell us your name and address.
Oh, I apologize. I'm not good at this. Bob Whalen, 40 Indian Hill Road, Milford, Connecticut. I have 2 signatures on Myers Court. I also have 3 signatures of properties that do abut this property, including 32 Indian Hill Road, which the property that they want to propose to put a home on was at one time the rear or backyard of 32 Indian Hill Road, as well as the house next to that, which is also touches the Lesso's property. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, Alderman Vecchiarelli. Agenda item number 3, consideration of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on October 5th, 2016.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like, through you, for the body to consider a revisitation of the September 12th minutes in order to make changes. I put that in the form of a motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Alderman Anderson, you have the floor.
I believe first we need to vote on it, is that correct?
No,
we need to
motion
vote
has been made and seconded, and then there's no discussion, so you wanted to bring it to our attention what you wanted to bring up?
Under Robert's rules, I believe that we need to vote on whether to revisit first.
What is the motion, Alderman Anderson? To revisit the previous?
I would like to make a couple of amendments to the minutes of September 12th. And in order to do that, there must be a 2/3 vote in order to revisit the minutes.
All right, we'll take a vote at this time. Did you hear Alderman Anderson's request?
Yes, I did, but a point of clarification, how could you make amendments to previous minutes that already have been approved? Is that a correction or an addition? I don't understand the amendment part. Maybe you can explain it.
It's a correction, correct, Mr.
It's a correction, okay. Add something, amending something.
He's gonna read. All in favor? Opposed? Alderman Anderson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In the September 12th minutes, there was discussion about the solid waste budget deficiency, and my good friend Alderman Bevan was quoted where I asked a question that was related to the sanitation budget. So therefore, the revised language would read, Alderman Anderson asked if this was related to the $200,000 budget transfer at the end of the budget year, and now $100,000 was being transferred back. That's the language of the First Amendment.
Anyone want to make a motion to accept the corrections as read?
Can I offer the second?
Why don't you do them all at once, Alderman Anderson?
Okay, thank you. Secondly, during the time that there was a report of the standing committees, Alderman Anderson stated as chairman of the Public Works Committee, he would like to give members of the Public Works Committee and any other board members an opportunity to ask questions regarding the new sanitation program. Those are my 2 changes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Motion has been made and seconded to make the corrections of those minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item number 4, consideration of minutes from the special organizational meeting.
Did we have this?
it was called a special meeting because it wasn't an ordinary, regular date.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the special organizational meeting.
It wasn't called an organization.
It was just a special meeting. A special meeting that we had November, what was the date? Apparently, we didn't have a special meeting, so.
Minutes have been accepted.
Yep, the minutes were accepted already.
Thank you, Alderman Vecchiarelli. Under Chairman's report, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow's Veterans Day, and I want to thank the aldermen that participated in the Veterans Day Parade on Sunday. It wasn't as well attended as I would have liked to see, but it was attended, and the speeches were very much appreciated by all. Agenda item number 6, Mayor's report. Recommendations. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Alderman Bevan, Alderman Vitro, Alderman Hardiman, who is not able to be here. Thank you for your service. Mr. Fournier, Mr. Kersadian, and I know that there's other members in the audience here tonight who served our nation proudly. Again, we do appreciate the service and the sacrifice. This is a week where we just completed a long campaign and a long election. I would like to congratulate everybody who ran, both those folks who were elected as well as those candidates that did not receive the most votes. One thing that all of us as Americans certainly understand is that there are issues in this great American democracy that divide us, but at the end of the day, once the election is over, we roll up our sleeves, we get back to work, and we work to make this community, this state, and this nation a better place to live. So with that, I respectfully request your consideration and action on those items listed in the agenda, 8A through 8G. I'm sorry, 8F. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Open under agenda number 7. We have no unfinished business. Moving on to agenda item number 8, new business. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item number 8A.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached resolution regarding the special reserve account for Founders Way.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just a correction on it's Founders Walk, not Founders Way.
Thank you, Alderman Vitale.
Founders Walkway.
Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I just wanted to ask the mayor if you could provide just an update on Founders Walk and the status of it and just anything that's happening with it currently.
Thank you, Alderman Grant. I will do you one better. I'll give you a brief synopsis, but then we do have the chairman of the committee, James Maroney, and our community development director who's helped organizing this grant-based project for the city. As a broad overview, really all the engineering is done. We had hoped to start this project much earlier, but the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection is reviewing a portion of the project that stabilizes the embankment that goes into the Weppewog River where the head of the harbor is. And we are at this point considering whether to bifurcate the project and do the stabilization after the rest of the walkway, or whether to do them all at once. It obviously makes sense to do them all at once, but the timing of it, we don't want this walkway project to be under construction during the height of the summer, during the height of the summer season when everybody is using this area to access the harbor and the downtown. So I'd like to recognize our Community Development Director, Julie Nash, and the chairman of the committee, the building committee, for a little bit of additional information if they have some. I know that they do have some upcoming meetings where they're going to be making some big decisions.
Alderman Vitro, Mayor Blake, thank you very much. Just to update you, unfortunately, as we were doing discovery in the project, we realized that there was more remediation that needed to be done in stabilizing the shore, and that is now what's holding us up in waiting for the permitting process with DEEP. And they're going through reorganizations, which is further slowing it down because the person we had been working with, Sue Jacobson, has been reassigned. It's now Jeff Caola, but next Thursday, November 17th, we do have a meeting with our engineer, and I may be attending that as well up in Hartford to discuss this project. This grant in particular is a grant from the Realtors Association that we had applied for as an extension of this project for a strategic plan involving the whole area behind, well, the whole area of Fowler's Field. If you're familiar with Dean Allen Plattis's plan of conservation and development for the city of Milford, they did talk about ways for reusing that. So we want to make sure that if we, and this isn't to reuse the project, it's just to make sure that we're doing this in a thoughtful way in terms of what could possibly come down the road after we do. This is a very small piece of the project, and you don't want to build something and beautify one area only to 5 years down the road, have it torn up when they find out we want to do something else there instead. So again, it's an extension in a way of Mayor Blake's vision of the Walkable City initiative with the increasing the walkability of downtown and also of being thoughtful in the way we do development downtown. So, and this is, the grant is a $10,000 grant from the Realtors Association. Thank you to Carolyn Auger from Ravis who had applied for it. $900 comes from the New Haven Middlesex Realtors Association, and $9,100 comes from the National Realtors Association as part of their Smart Growth initiative.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8B.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached revised cash advance resolution regarding the body-worn camera grant program.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Shaw.
Yeah, through you. I just have a quick question. This is a yearly? This is, the cost for the cameras are yearly? Do I read that correct?
Mayor Blake, Chairman Vitro, and the board. The cost is for a 5-year program, and the grant will will reimburse the city for the cost for all the hardware and the storage for the first year. And it's only the storage after that that we would be paying. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Alderman Shaw's question, this is actually a grant that the city has already approved last spring. We are expanding the grant portion of it, though, so by about $100,000. So we're going to be receiving more money from the state than we were last spring, so we are expanding the cash advance as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any more discussion? Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
No more discussion. I'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8C.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached allocation transfer number 3 for C-Flex V's replacement.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
I see the Director Bud, and I just have one question. Is there, do you have any idea where that maybe the electrolysis is coming from in that hot zone? You know, it's like somebody's sending electric waves through a certain area? Or?
Well, good evening. You know, you hear talk about electrolysis and hot spots, and whether it is, what we're hoping is as they're replaced, as these shackles are replaced, we can document the location of each one and the condition of each one to see if possibly there are hot spots in the harbor where this corrosion is taking place at a higher level than other locations. But nothing's been determined, but this survey might help.
I mean, we don't have any underground electrical cables or anything going in over there, right?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8D.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached resolution regarding emergency medical services.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any motion? Is there any discussion? Alderman Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Reading this, I see that we have 25% and a $500,000 cap. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit more about where the 75% is and what the program really consists of? Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Bevan. This is a project that our fire department in the city of Milford have been working on for many, many years. It is something that is going to, number one, improve the health and the safety of the citizens of Milford and the residents of Milford who utilize this service. Our firefighters are the finest and bravest in the nation, and they are actually within 1% of 1% of all fire departments. We're a Class 1 rated fire service. And not only do we have good fire suppression, but we were one of the first, if not the first, fire department in the state of Connecticut to have emergency medical services back 40 years ago. And we have developed emergency medical services that are second to none. We have 113 firefighters, 112 of whom are EMTs, 27 of whom are also paramedics. And we respond to calls generally under 4 minutes. Our first responders, our EMTs and paramedics, are at the scene within 4 minutes generally. That is not the case for ambulance companies that we've used in the past. That's really what's driving this. The fact that every second that a patient has to get to the hospital for example, a cardiac issue, are life-changing, life-saving seconds. And our first responders get there faster than anyone else. So that's what's driving this. That's what drove us to, again, take over the transport. We have always held the advanced life support license with the state of Connecticut, Department of Public Health. We have, for the last several years, advocated to the General Assembly of the state of Connecticut to adjust the legislation so that we could take back the medallion or the license from a private ambulance company that previously held it, because we could do a better job. And we were able to do that. Then we advocated at the Department of Public Health through an administrative hearing process that took over a year in order to secure that license. Within the last month, we took over full and final, formally, the transportation. So now that we are doing the basic life support, the advanced life support, and the transport right here in-house in the city of Milford in the fire department. We do have Nelson Ambulance Company, who won a request for qualifications that your board authorized last month. But it is going tremendously. Not only are we able to respond faster and have it be life-saving, but we're generating some funding in order to offset the operations. To your specific question, Alderman Bevan, the amount that is under consideration right now was a figure that was developed by our fire department and our fire chief, who's here for some additional explanation. We are anticipating that there's going to be some additional cost in terms of operations. That's why we're allocating approximately $500,000 a year. There's obviously going to be some additional capital costs. We're going to need to have probably 3 ambulance companies on at heightened periods. Right now we have 2 ambulances, so we're looking to purchase down the road at least 1 additional ambulances, and then obviously rotate them on a appropriate basis. But this account will also be used for any type of fire apparatus, which, as you know from previous bonding authorizations, cost a lot of money. We're going to be able to offset that with non-taxpayer money. This will also be used for some of the operational costs. There's going to be some additional overtime likely, but again, it's going to be a fraction of the amount that we take in terms of the funding that's associated with offsetting the costs of the operation. So I do know that our fire chief and our assistant chief and our battalion, at least 1 battalion chief, are with us this evening. They've really been at the forefront of this. They've driven this home, and again, this is one of those huge benefits to the city. It's really a home run. So I don't know, Chief Ito or Chief Baker or Chief Wasmer.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up.
Member Bevan.
Mr. Mayor, you talked of the 25%, the 75%. What were your plans for the 75%?
The 75% is going back to the general fund, so it's brand new revenue, potentially $1 million, $2 million every year that will help offset taxes. So it's, again, a home run because it will make everybody's taxes in the city of Milford that much less. So it's brand new revenue, non-taxpayer revenue that we've never seen before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Through you to the Finance Director. Peter, would this be considered more or less an enterprise fund, being that it's generating revenue for the city?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Giannattasio, it is possible that down the road we would have to look at this as an enterprise fund and look at the amount of revenues coming in, the related expenditures, and I do admit that is something we have to look at down the road.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, so the way the fund is structured presently, what we're voting on tonight is that those monies that are generated could only be exclusively used within the fire department. It cannot, except the 75% you mentioned was going back into the general fund. So is the split 25-75, 25 into the fire department, and then the remainder 75 is going into the general fund? Is that accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Alderman, yes, 25% goes into the special account for the use of the fire department, and the other 75% goes to the general fund to support the city's operating budget.
Okay, so that raises my next question. Can you just share with us what the difference would be if this was to end up being an enterprise fund? How would the structure be as far as where the money could be spent?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we would have to look at that very carefully, but at a very high level, it would be similar, and perhaps a little bit different, but very similar to the marina, where you would have the revenue coming into the enterprise fund. It would be self-sustaining, operating like a business, if you will, and the related expenditures, capital, operating expenditures, et cetera, would have to be within the fund as well, supported by the revenue that comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Peter, just what is the criteria? I mean, you kind of talked to the point of down the road, but is there a point at which, and what is the criteria that creates and makes this an enterprise fund?
I had some initial conversations with our independent auditors, and the criteria is not set in stone, but what we do know is that if the business operations, if you will, are ongoing, meaning they're going to recur year after year, and this is something that's going on for a longer period of time, and also looking at materiality in terms of the amount of revenue. When we were looking at revenue in the ballpark of 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 relative to our large $200 million general fund budget, it wasn't a given that we would have to right away establish an enterprise fund. But now that we are potentially looking at revenue exceeding $1 million, it requires us to look more carefully at it and have further study and discussion amongst ourselves, with the fire department, with the mayor, and also with our auditors to see when is the right time to establish the enterprise fund.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item number 8E.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consideration of the attached recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, dated October 19, 2016, for a lease of a portion of 25-27 Daniel Street to Eli's Restaurant for outdoor patio, and to authorize the mayor and the city attorney to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents to effectuate said lease.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed?
No.
Roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Anderson.
No.
Alderman Beatty. Alderman Bevan.
No.
Alderman Beer.
Yes.
Alderman Casey.
Yes.
Alderman Gurman.
Yes.
Alderman Giannatasio.
Yes.
Alderman Golden. Alderman Grant.
Yes.
Alderman Shaw. Alderman Smith. Alderman Vecchiarelli. Alderman Vitro.
Yes.
Alderman Vitale.
Yes.
Eight yes, 6 no. Motion passes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8F.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached resolution regarding the Board of Aldermen approval pursuant to the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission pursuant to 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statute to transfer approximately 0.07 acres of land at the end of Myers Lane, 0 Myers Lane, tax MBL 037-520-13DD to an adjoining landowner in order for the landowner to construct driveway access to a proposed single-family lot, and to direct and authorize the city attorney and mayor to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents to effectuate said transfer, including but not limited to executing a deed of conveyance. It's requested by Alderman Anthony Giannatasio.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Shaw.
Not really a discussion. Could I recognize the open space manager, Steve Johnson?
Absolutely. Mr. Johnson, you want to come forward, please?
And while he gets, the reason I'm asking is that there's a little bit of a discussion over if this is open space or not, and that's why I want to recognize the open space manager. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, my name is Steve Johnson, open space and natural resource agent, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding this matter before you.
Then I'll start. I guess the basic question is there's a question here regarding access to this particular parcel. And I know that Attorney Kersaden said that, or I believe, I don't want to misquote him, but that there was still sufficient access. Can you address that?
Yeah, as part of, I was asked to comment by the Planning and Zoning Office on this, and one of my comments was a concern about future access, creating a there's a landlocked parcel behind this, but I said that there would be, should be provisions for an easement if this was approved to provide access, which Attorney Kersaden has indicated that they would be providing that.
If other people have questions of Mr. Johnson, I don't want to.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
It was stated that it was an open space. Are you saying, what's your opinion on it? Is it or isn't it?
Well, my research on this parcel and all parcels that I've inventoried as undeveloped land that is owned by the city, that this particular piece was part of the 8-lot Gulf Acres subdivision. That during the discussions of the subdivision in September of 1969, that it was agreed by the Planning and Zoning Board that this small parcel was going to be dedicated as open space. And there was a map modified to reflect that. The following meeting in October, when they finalized the subdivision plans, that reference to open space was not listed, and the map that was filed did not reference any open space dedication. My looking at it, and I'm advisory only, and I'm not an attorney, was that the September motion and letter that acknowledged that it was going to be dedicated was never changed on the following meeting, so that the interpretation was, my interpretation, was that it was intended to be open space as part of the open space set-aside.
Just a follow-up, Mr. Chair. So we're talking about two different issues here. There are some space that's designated as open space, and some space that's not open space. How do you discern the two?
Well, from the state level down, there is recognized open space that is both protected open space, deed restricted, and there's also provisions even in the state's green plan as unprotected open space. It's accessible to the public, but it's not deed restricted in perpetuity.
So this is undesignated open space, so therefore, it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer. I'm not the authority on whether, my interpretation of this parcel of land stems from the September letter on file in the Planning and Zoning, but the final deed that was filed and the map that was filed didn't reflect that.
Thank you.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So is there any other access to that property, the open space property, other than that?
Well, there's, as Attorney correctly stated, that That marsh area, multiple parcels, there's an access further north on Oldfield up towards Buckingham that you could access. It's about 4/10 of a mile back behind the houses along that area. That parcel can also be accessed if you're adventurous from what's the name of the Welch's Point Road near the pump station and the playground. It's very wet in there, so along the edges it could be accessed. I think in terms of one of the provisions of open spaces, it's also provides, habitat value, beyond recreational value. And clearly, this is a wetland type area for habitat.
So would there be a reason to access it? I mean, if it's wetlands back there, why would you have to get back
there? There are people that will go back there for birding. Probably not many, but I've been back walking through there, and there's a lot of bird life back there, and the typical type of deer and other things you would expect in that area.
Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
right here. How are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Good. Good evening. So, as an advisory and as part of your job description, I know that you deal a lot with city-owned property.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this has occurred yet, but through your tenure, but when people decide that they want to convey their property over to the city in fee simple absolute, at that point, have you been involved with any of those transactions?
When the people are dedicating
In other
property?
words, if somebody has an additional space
Mhm.
on their lot and they feel that they don't want to maintain it and it's a burden to them or it's of no value, it's of
Mhm.
no use, and they want to convey it over
Mhm.
to the city and it's not deed restricted,
Mhm.
how would you consider that? Would you consider that, if I give the city property, are you considering that as open space?
I would answer that in what their intent was. I would, in terms of what they're the ones who's requesting the city accept this, I would want to know what their basis for wanting to do that and what their intent was.
If it was unusable?
Yeah, and what I would do is, understanding the intent of the donor of the land and work together with the mayor and the city attorneys to make sure that it's handled honoring that intent of the landowner. In this last several years, there's the dedications of land in the city, within the city limits that I'm aware of, have been dedicated to the Milford Land Conservation Trust.
I guess my concern is moving forward the way that you interpret open space,
Mhm.
because I don't share the same opinion.
Mhm.
I think that this space was conveyed to the city not as open space and should not be part of open space. We're only talking about .07, which is a sliver of a sliver, and by state statute, it doesn't even require a public hearing. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but that goes to show you the size of it is really not relevant.
As I stated, and when I was asked my opinion, my primary concern was one of setting a precedent that could affect other possible open space sale or discussions in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion? Alderman Shaw.
Yeah, I think I want to clarify something that Alderman Giannatasio. There may be some dispute, but the original acceptance of this property in 1969 was as open space. That was in the P&Z minutes, or can you just clarify? Evidently, I misunderstood.
So to clarify, there was a motion accepted in the Planning and Zoning minutes on September of 1969, that reflected that this would be dedicated, the final plans would reflect this as open space. But however, the final planning and zoning acceptance of this as it was simply a dedication to the city, and the final deed nor map reflected it as open space.
And there's no way to see if that was intentional or just a Scrivener's error?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on Alderman Shaw's point, open space, the term is a little bit loosey-goosey. There is deed-restricted open space in the city of Milford, which is specific and encumbers the deed, or the land use records, but everything else, the term open space, there's passive recreation open space, there's recreational open space. Mr. Johnson, when he was hired by the city of Milford, one of the charges of this board, and one of the things that is the focus of his job description, was to develop an open space inventory. And we have 3,000 plus acres of open space in Milford, but it's really a patchwork of different types of open space. Open space experts will tell you that there is no one definition of open space. Open space takes many forms. And I don't mean to go too far afield here, but there are open space parcels that the city owns that sometimes we don't necessarily use until many years after, but it is still considered the city open space. This parcel right here is, I guess, a gateway to open space. That is what Mr. Johnson was talking about.
Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so I understand, Steve, you were satisfied with the language in the amended proposal here. The Attorney Crusading put forward that access would still is written into this language. So from a strictly deed standpoint or a land record standpoint, you have no objection to the accessibility of open space beyond this property?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing, if I might, Mr. Chairman. I haven't heard any compelling testimony here tonight why we shouldn't do this. When I was on the board years ago, we used to just cede over these, what we used to call paper roads, in order to make whole certain private properties. Mr. Wayland came with a petition, but the only thing I heard him say was this would set a dangerous precedent. And I've heard this before from our city attorney's office with regard to some other land designation questions I brought up. If I might, maybe I could ask the city attorney, Attorney Burcham, what would be the downside or precedent in transferring this property over to the lessos as has been proposed in this motion? I mean, let me ask you this. Notice it is for $10 is what is the figure. Is there some legal term of art? If you do it for $1, it's no longer a sale? I mean, is there something in that? What's the significance of this, and what are the implications of transferring this that might bode ill for the city on future transactions?
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Smith, let me just make sure that I'm going to answer the same thing you asked. When you talk about paper streets and finalizing those, that's not this. This is a parcel of land that the city owns in fee simple. A paper street is something that the city has a public right-of-way over. All right? We don't have a fee interest in it. In terms of precedent, I would think that each request you have to take up on its merits. So I don't think that hypothetically, if this board were to grant the 824 in this instance, it would be necessarily bound for a subsequent one on a different property. Each property is different and unique, and you weigh all those factors.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Alderman Smith's question, though, about precedent setting, there has been a consistent policy since before I became mayor that all 824 requests that had to do with the transfer, the sale, or the lease of city property to somebody else had to go through a process. And again, I've been involved with local Milford city government for the last 15 years, and this application has taken a different route than any other application. This application is precedent setting. The request that I have always had to applicants for a lease or a sale, and you saw it with the last agenda item, is that they had to get the buy-in of the abutting stakeholders or property owners before we were going to recommend it to the Board of Aldermen. This is one of the first 2 or 3 applications that have ever gone directly from the applicant to the Planning and Zoning Board, but this is the first application that has not gone through at least the mayor's office to the Board of Aldermen for a sale or a lease of city property. Alderman Giannatasio did recommend this agenda item, and the only concern I have, and I know that there's issues that you talked about with respect to open space. I know that there's issues that you talked about with respect to some of the neighborhood concerns. My concern is simple. I don't want to make one person or one organization happy and at the same time make a problem for 12 others. So the process that we have, the process that we've been very consistent with, and you've seen it come through your board, is that before we recommend a sale or a lease of city property, I'm not going to take a position on this property. I'm going to let you make that decision, obviously. I won't say one way or the other. The only concerns that I have is the process, that this went through a different process. I've always asked that the neighbors weigh in, that the applicant get the buy-in, the support. You've seen it through other applications. You saw it through the last agenda item where they got the sign-in that the abutting property owners or the downtown stakeholders didn't object. You saw it a month ago or 2 months ago with the property over by the Buick dealership. They signed off on that. Every single time the city has leased or sold a piece of city property, they've always gone through this consistent process where they get the buy-in of the abutting neighborhood. I don't want to make, my only concern is I don't want to make 12 different households unhappy, and I know that there was a petition and there's questions whether it was 23 households or 44 households, but that's not my concern. My concern is that that should have done before it even made it to the Board of Aldermen.
Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mayor Blake. Mayor Blake, the process is at hand. This was referred to us from the Planning and Zoning. Your policy, respectfully, isn't part of the process. So this is why I put this forward. I believe in reasonable government. I think it's a reasonable request. The hardship is they own the property. It is a building lot. There's someone that's handicapped that needs to live on a one-level house, and this is the remedy. So I felt that this was the right thing to do. As far as a buy-in, we are the buy-in. We are elected officials. Each one of us represents a district. This isn't even in my district. I saw a newspaper article about this property, and that's how I became familiar with it. And then the more I got into it and I realized what was actually happening, I almost felt bad. I mean, I want to help these people, and you know, I respect your policy, but I think it's ineffective. I think it causes more adversity. I mean, look at Eli's. This is the second time for it to go through. It really should have passed the first time. So, you know, at this point, I would like to recognize Attorney Crusadin, because I would like him to weigh in on some of the things that, from a legal standpoint, in regards to the lot itself. So if I can do that now, Mr. Chairman, I'd appreciate it.
I'm going to recognize Alderman Beatty first.
Thank you. Through you. I request a recess, please.
5-minute recess.
5 minutes.
We're out of recess. Alderman Shaw, you have something you want to offer?
Yeah, if I may. I would offer, I'm going to offer to deny this, and I guess the reason is I would want to see the buy-in of all the neighbors. I think that's fair. And I'm concerned, and I want clarity about the concerns about being able to enter this open space. But basically, at the end of the day, I think for us to rule on something, a benefit to one person when we don't know what the abutting owners are, is not a direction I feel comfortable going in. So that's why I'm going to vote to deny.
Alderman Giannattasio.
Mr. Chairman, through you, there is a motion on the floor, but I would like to recognize Attorney Crusaden so he can speak to some of the legalities of this, if that's okay. Thank you.
Alderman Giannattasio, we've already heard from Attorney Crusaden on this.
Well,
I'd like to let the rest of the aldermen on the discussion, let them, because maybe some of their questions will be answered at the same time.
Can I ask Attorney Crusaden a question?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Chairman, per aldermanic rules, someone from the 4th District could ask for him to be recognized. I believe he lives in the 4th District over in Woodmont.
The property's in the 5th District, that property?
Yeah. Your residents, if you're a resident, any resident can be recognized by an alderman of that district. So if you want to give your legal residence.
My legal residence is in the 4th District, 11 Bonsaline Street, Milford.
So I'd like to recognize Kevin for a couple of questions.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alderman Gurman. Just very briefly, and I know there's a motion, and I understand Alderman Shaw has her vote.
Alderman Anderson.
Sorry to interrupt, Attorney, but it's in the form of a question. It's to allow aldermen to ask questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Attorney Crusaden, can you just recap what we went through and clarify a couple things?
Yes. To specifically answer the question about what this was approved as in 1969, what Mr. Johnson was referring to earlier is a subcommittee meeting minutes and a map that was drawn up. The official, you have the minutes that I presented to you at the public hearing from the October 1969 meeting. That official approval does not dedicate this land as open space. It sets it aside. I think it's very dangerous, and I think I put that in my memo, to go back and try to, 47 years later, and try to figure out what the intent was of that committee. Secondarily to that, I have, and I could submit it as a exhibit, a map that also has proposed Myers Lane extension that runs a street right past this. That's not the official map either. That's why I didn't bring it to your attention earlier. So I think to have a subcommittee approval and then there'd be questions about, well, what was their intention back in 1969, I think is a dangerous road to go on. I think we need to stick with the facts. It's not declared open space. There are absolutely no access issues because we've given them a full and perpetual access easement, and there's access from other parts of the, from Oldfield Lane and Welch's Point, to recap that point. And lastly, with respect to Mayor Blake's comments that this is somehow setting a precedent and we haven't followed the normal procedure, respectfully, he and I have gone back and forth on that many times. I completely disagree with that. I think that the buy-in policy of the neighbors adds a layer to the statutory approval process, which we have followed to the letter. We have followed everything exactly the way to be here. So to suggest that this is somehow some special way we get on the agenda, that is absolutely incorrect. A buy-in process for you who sit on the board, and I'm a resident of Milford, as I just stated a few minutes ago, been a resident of Milford a long time. Buy-in process is a bad idea. causes adversity between neighbors, and it also exalts the neighbors' rights over the applicant's rights. So now we have people that can't even get on an agenda. You can't even get on an agenda because you have to get the neighbors to say it's okay. Well, as Alderman Giannatasio said earlier, this board is the buy-in, this board is the approval authority for this. So the neighbors have a right to come and public speak. We respectfully listen to them. We respectfully reply to their comments. That's the way it's supposed to work. We shouldn't have to go around to the neighbors and knock on doors and say, hey neighbor, would you think I could build a house here next week, or in a couple years, will you let me on the aldermanic agenda? That's not how that's supposed to work. It causes situations where people would demand money from each other, people can stall things, and it's also very unclear. How many neighbors are we supposed to get? Are we supposed to get 50 neighbors, 25 neighbors, 2 neighbors? What are they supposed to say? What if I get 5 neighbors and then the other 5 neighbors say, we don't agree with it? Then what? Do we get on the agenda at that point? That's why, I had submitted to the Planning and Zoning Board proposed policies for 8-24 for getting on the agenda. I could submit them through the city attorney's office. I might have even given City Attorney Burcham a copy at one point in time. So that's why this is a frustrating process. We've been doing this now for 2 years to try to get on this agenda. So we're here tonight. I appreciate being recognized. If anybody has any other questions for me, thank you.
Just to follow up on that. Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. So, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Persade have expressed multiple times that there will still be access to the open space that's back there, and it was discussed that it's wetlands, which is used as a habitat. And the area that we're talking about is extremely small and wouldn't impact the environmental habitat of the overall wetlands. But the question that I have for Mr. Persade is that we're not approving that another house be built tonight. We're just approving that this one area be sold. Does this still need approval from Planning and Zoning to subdivide the lot for them to build another home?
Yes, Alderman Grant, it needs approval from both inland wetlands, and it needs re-subdivision approval from the Planning and Zoning Board with a site plan approval at the same time.
Okay, so just to clarify, if the neighbors are objecting to a home being built, they can bring that up to the Planning and Zoning when it goes before that board, is that correct?
There will be most likely a public hearing for inland wetlands, and there would be a public hearing for the subdivision, and probably the same neighbors will be notified by mail.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Anderson.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Attorney Kersaden. So, Attorney Kersaden, what was the notification process to adjoining neighbors, and which addresses received a notice?
The notification process is by state statute, and the city of Milford also has an ordinance. I believe it was with the neighbors within 200 feet, certified mailings, which we did that. It said when the night of the hearing was, what we were trying to do. I have additional copies, but copies have also already been submitted to the city attorney's office and filed with that. Another part of the notice requirement is that a sign is posted by Public Works that's at the property location. There's no time frame required for that, but it was posted a week or so ago that says the date and time of the hearing. And it also is published in the newspaper twice, I think within certain time frames, which it has been published in the newspaper. It was published at the same times as Daniel Street was published.
All right, so let's go back to the public hearing process. You're talking about the public hearing before Planning and Zoning.
Yes.
How many neighbors are within 200 feet?
I could pull the list out if you'd like. Let's see, 7, 13, 19. These are property addresses. So
are we talking Myers Court or Myers Lane?
These are a 200-foot radius, so it's Myers Lane, Myers Court, Indian Hill Road.
Could you be a little more specific, please?
Would you like me to read every neighbor that was sent a letter?
I would like to know the addresses that received notification.
Okay. 46 Campfield Circle, 10 Myers Lane, 20 Myers Lane, 5 Myers Court, 11 Myers Court, 22 Myers Court, 12 Indian Hill Road, City Milford, 110 River Street, 50 Campfield Circle, 113 Phipps Drive, the State of Charles Hoenick, 5992 Leland Street, St. Petersburg, Florida, 48 Indian Hill Road, 15 Myers Court, 16 Myers Lane, 22 Indian Hill Road, 40 Indian Hill Road, 4 Myers Lane, 32 Indian Hill Road, and City of Milford, 70 West River Street.
What was the date of the notice?
It was mailed out, the date of the letter was October 27th, and it was mailed October 27th.
Thank you. A further question. When I met with the Lessos, who were terrific to actually meet and discuss their proposal, I also met with neighbors along Indian Hill. Mr. Lesso had indicated that access to the adjoining property would be along what is now city-owned. And if you're traveling at the end of the road, Myers Lane, on the right-hand side there's an old stone wall, and there would be, according to Mr. Lesso, driveway access provided with a newly constructed driveway between two existing mature trees. The rest would remain as city access to the open space land. Is that a correct understanding?
I think, yes, it is a little bit premature. I believe that that is the intent, Alderman Anderson, but as Alderman Grant stated or brought up, asked the question, we have to go back, or if they are approved for the transfer of this land, we have to go back to inland wetlands and subdivision approval. As part of that process, engineering will be done with respect to drainage and things of that nature. So the intent right now is to preserve all of that. However, I can't speak to whether there might be some engineering issue or something that would cause the driveway to be slightly relocated and but I'm sure they could replant some trees.
I can appreciate that, and I appreciate your response, because I just believe in nailing it down as best possible. Looking at a map is one thing, and then having some assurance provides me with a little more clarity. Finally, my third question, Mr. Chairman, through you, is with regard to the valuation. We're asked to provide conveyance for $10. The city assessor's office values the property at $5,000. Why is there that difference?
In real estate, there's a variety of reasons where it used to be $1 another valuable consideration. Over the years, it's changed to $10 another valuable consideration. How it appeared, I think, as part of Alderman Giannatasio's request for it to be added to the agenda was as a placeholder. So, you know, I didn't want to have the Lessos, you know, quote unquote, bidding against themselves about what the value of the lot was. So we leave it to the discretion of the board what it is. So that's really more, that was more just a placeholder, just to have something for the board to make a motion on and discuss.
Thank you very much for your responses, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney. So I think it's clear that it is not open space. It's just deeded property to Milford. Correct? So there's no open space issue at this point.
It's our position that it is not open space. It was not. It's not, definitely not deed restricted open space. And if the concern about open space is at the root of that question, is this board legally allowed to transfer the property for development purposes to an adjoining neighbor? And the answer to that is yes. That's what the assistant city attorney said. She had just mentioned there should be an access easement, which we've granted. You have a draft proposal of that in your package, along with the proposed contract that has the purchase price blank. But for the access easement, for example, it says $10 and other valuable consideration. That's what we're giving back to the city. So it's our position it is not open space. I've disagreed and respectfully to Mr. Johnson, when he wrote his memo, there are several factual inaccuracies in that. So it's not open space, and it's not public space. That's why I submitted to the board earlier a picture of a no trespassing sign. So it's City of Milford land that the City of Milford doesn't want anybody on.
With that said, I would like to, well, I'm in favor of it, I would like to propose an amount, and you also mentioned between $2,000 and $5,000. I would like just to propose amount of halfway point there, $3,500, if we get to that point.
Alderman Gorman, we're already on a motion, so you want to make that an amendment after this motion is...
Yes, I would like to make that an amendment.
Is there a second on the amendment? Second? Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none.
Does he have a second on it?
Yeah. Alderman Vitale.
What is the amendment? I didn't hear it.
He put a price tag on it.
Could you read the amendment?
Alderman Gorman, you want to read that again?
Yes, I would make an amendment for a price tag of $3,500 for the piece.
The amendment was made and seconded. Any discussion on there was no more discussion on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed?
No.
Roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Anderson.
Passed.
Excuse me. Alderman Beatty. Alderman Bevan. Alderman Beer.
Yes.
Alderman Casey.
Yes.
Alderman Gorman.
Yes.
Alderman Gennatasio.
Yes.
Alderman Golden. Alderman Grant.
No.
Alderman Shaw. Alderman Smith. Alderman Beccarelli. Alderman Vitro.
No.
Alderman Vitale.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman
Vote no.
Anderson.
I vote no.
Alderman Anderson changed his,
To
what
no?
was that originally? Pass to a no. Thank you, Alderman Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, 8 no, 5 yes, 1 abstention.
On the original motion. All in favor? Opposed?
No.
Roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please.
On the main motion, Alderman Anderson.
No.
Alderman Beatty. That was a no, right? Alderman Bevan. Alderman Beer.
Yes.
Alderman Casey.
Yes.
Alderman Gorman.
Yes.
Alderman Gennatasio.
Yes.
Alderman Golden. Alderman Grant.
No.
Alderman Shaw. Alderman Smith. Alderman Beccarelli. Alderman Vitro.
No.
Alderman Vitale.
9 no, 5 yes, motion fails. Moving on to agenda number 9. There is no new business. Moving on to agenda item number 10. Moving on to, there is no budget member transfers. Moving on to refunds. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item number 11A.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the refunds in the amount of $28,095.35.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 11B.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the suspense list, $741,000.65.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 12, reports of standing committees. Are there any reports of standing committees? Hearing none. Moving on to agenda item number 13, any reports from any special committees? Hearing none. Moving on to agenda item number 14. The next item on our agenda is the executive session. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss 14A, consideration of collective bargaining agreement between the City of Milford and United Public Service Employees, Union Local 424, Unit 97, Milford Supervisors. 14B, consideration of collective bargaining agreement between the City of Milford and the Milford City Hall Employees Association, Local 1303-452. And joining us in executive session for items 14A and 14B will be the Mayor, Ben Blake, the City Attorney, John Bertram, the HR Director, Tanya Barnes, and joining us in executive session for 14C and D will be the Mayor and the City Attorney. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session. Alderman Vecchiarelli, we're out of recess.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve consideration of the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Milford and the United Public Service Employees Union, Local 424, Unit 97, Milford Supervisors, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli. Alderman 14B.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve consideration of the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Milford and the Milford City Hall Employees Association, Local 1303-452, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, and I'd like to read the amendment in its entirety.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Consideration of collective bargaining agreement between the City of Milford and the Milford City Hall Employees Association, Local 1303-452, with amendment to reject proposal in definition of employees.
Second.
The amendment's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Anderson?
Yes.
Alderman Beatty? Yes. Alderman Bevan?
Yes.
Alderman Beer?
Yes.
Alderman Casey?
Yes.
Alderman Gurman?
Yes.
Alderman Gennatasio?
Yes.
Alderman Golden? Alderman Grant?
Yes.
Alderman Hardiman? Oh, I'm sorry. New pacer. Alderman Shaw? Alderman Smith? Alderman Vecchiarelli? Alderman DeVitro?
Yes.
Alderman Vitale?
Yes. Twelve yes, 2 no. The amendment passes. On the original motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Can I have a second? Thank you, Tony. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.